What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Leveled Up Life podcast. Branamier, Courtney, as always, here with Paul McClain.
My man.
Helping you level up your life in all the areas that matter most: faith, family, fitness, finance, and franchise. Our goal, our heart, is to help you take wherever you're at in life right now and just get you to the next level.
Get better.
That's what we're all trying to do, just trying to progress, it's so crazy. The year's almost over, bro.
That is wild.
Dude.
Yeah, my wife's already asking for Christmas, list and
Bro, Mariah is
Christmas budget.
She has all four of my kids have their own Amazon wish list cart that they've been building since July.
Yeah, make sure she doesn't discuss that with her sister.
Bro, she probably got it from her sister.
Yeah, she probably did.
So, how's your year going? Let us know in the chat. Let us know if this podcast is helping you level up in any area, because that's our heart, that's our desire, is to take you from where you are to where you know you could and should be. And last week, if you tuned in, we were talking about our kids and talking about it's really a crazy world that we live in, bro. I've been in the series at church, called "This Is for Them." Like everything we're doing in our life, in our business, our church, our ministry, whatever it is, if you just scale it back, it's really for the next generation, right? Of course, it takes care of you and your needs, but dude, you don't sacrifice, you don't give, you don't serve, you don't go above and beyond just for you.
Yeah.
If it was just us, we live in our car at the beach somewhere.
That's exactly
what I
right.
mean?
Yeah.
Traveling around. But because we want to leave a legacy, we want to make an impact. Most of the stuff we do is for them. And so we're really trying to do our best to speak into that next generation. And last week, if you tuned in, we kind of talked about some of the pitfalls of this next generation. But today, we're going to take a little turn, talk about 3 different gifts that we can give our kids. So I'm excited, man.
Hey, I want to just do a quick shout out. If you guys are, like I am, I want to have each week kind of like a personal growth regimen. You kind of said it progression, like getting better. Like the whole goal is to grow and give. And any season I go back to in my life where I feel the most fulfillment, it's typically when I'm growing the most. Like I'm learning, I'm developing, and sometimes it's going through seasons of setbacks and struggles and failures where I'm like, dude, I'm messing up, man. I'm tripping up. Like I need to get better.
Yeah.
And then sitting there thinking about how can I get better and taking action. That's where the growth and that's where the fulfillment comes from, right?
100%.
I was talking to a buddy. He's like, man, this last year it's been a year. He's like, the year before in 2023, he's like, I was at the top, like the peak, like everything was going well. I was succeeding, fights I was winning, he's like, now this year's taking a turn. And I was like, man, the thing I realized is you can't experience 10 moments if you don't have 1 moment. And I think too many people live a life at a level 5 and 6. And so their whole life is just kind of mundane, average, mediocre. And you really don't ever experience those 10 breakthroughs until you have a 1, because a 1 allows you to think differently, make shifts, make changes, make adjustments, and those adjustments give you those 10 kind of moments. But I want to just say, if you're looking for a part of your week to say, how can I to listen to some better stuff, plug into God's House YouTube channel. Man, the messages are phenomenal. And there's no doubt that when you look at how many views that people, we've got a good online community of people that hop on and watch us. So for myself, every week, there's 2 messages that I want to watch when it comes to feeding my faith, right? I got stuff on the business. There's 2 different people that I follow when it comes to the business I'm in, whether that's health related with the Leveled Up Health, the real estate. But when it comes to faith, man, God's House, I'm always, for one, I'm there live, but then I go back and watch, and I told you the other day at the gym, and it was really good. The series that you're in. And so we're going to kind of jump into the same kind of stuff that you're talking about the church. So if you want to hop on at God's House YouTube, I think it'll go really well and couple well with what we're going to talk about today. But, family is a big focus of ours, right? It's faith, family, finance, franchise, and fitness. And so to kind of jump into family, there's 3 different gifts that you can give your kids that will make the longest lasting difference. One of them is having a community worth having. And so what does that mean? Well, a community worth having is putting them in an environment, because I can't choose who my kids are hanging out with at school.
Right.
I could try to influence it, but at the end of the day, man, when they leave the car, I'm just hoping for the best. Like hopefully I've led them in the time that I've got in the morning and the time I have throughout the day to help them make the right choices and identify who they should and shouldn't talk to, who's in line with their values or not in line with their values. But a community worth having, and what that looks like is this. I'm gonna give you a practical example. So when I get with you and your family and we're hanging out, my kids hanging out with you, it makes my kids better. Right, it's a good community. You'll speak life over my kids. You'll connect with my kids. You've got the same kind of values and future as far as the vision of where you want the kids to go, and you'll pause and you'll have those conversations, right? And it's that kind of stuff. Like, who are you connecting with outside of just yourself? The people that you're kind of bringing into the family, the people that your kids are interacting
100%.
with. It's a big deal. Those people, the kids are going to see how their relationship is together, how they treat each other as far as, their marriage and things like that. And so all that kind of stuff is crucial. You go to the animal kingdom, and there's all these different animals that, they learn from watching the example, right? And it's kind of like, we can say all the things we want to say, but at the end of the day, the kids are going to watch the example. The kids are going to follow the example. It's funny. My wife, the kids, we got a lot of kids. And so the other day they were doing their homework, and I don't know what it is about my kids, but 3 of them, they need like specific tutoring. Right. I asked you, I was like, do your kids, they're like, no, they just go home and do their homework. Tasha's like, I gotta like sit there, and so she's losing it, and then the kids ain't listening, and then they start fighting, they start yelling, and she's screaming like, stop yelling. And I was like, babe, like, they're listening to you yell when you say it. Like, I get it, like, hey, I'm not judging, because like I'm going nuts just hearing the dynamic, and I'm on the phone with her, right? And I'm not even in that environment, but they'll do what we do. It's kind of like, the action speaks so much louder than any kind of words that we can say. And so that example 100%. Is essential. You know what I mean?
Dude, it's crucial, because what's so crazy about and good about the world that we live in is like we do have access to community. Like if you think about back in the day, right? It like there's the old sayings, it takes a village. I think that's partially true.
I think it is true, man.
Dude, I think part of our culture is kind of lost that a little bit. Like where we become so individualistic, right? Like these are my kids, my ways. But when you got a good community and when you got good people around you, like I almost depend on it. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, as my boys are getting older now, it's like, of course I should be the loudest voice speaking to them, right? Like me and their mom, like of course, but like they don't always resonate with what I say. Mm-hmm. And so like having you over there, like speaking into, I heard you talking to Bronx the other day about like what he's going through and just speaking life into that. Like, dude, as a father, as a parent, like I need to be seeking wisdom outside of just my own little bubble, right? So that's why it's so important to get plugged into a church, plugged into a mastermind, plugged into like some sort of community gathering where you got other like-minded people that you can plug into. Because I was reading, I shared this at church the other day, but just a couple stats of kids like in America right now. So just think about this. 19 million kids in America right now are growing up in a home with no father, right? Talk about a kid that needs community, right? 15 million kids in America are growing up in a home where domestic abuse has occurred at least once. Like, dude, think about that. Like those kids without a community, without other people to lean on, like that's what they're seeing. And the chances are they'll recreate this, like the cycle will just continue. 8.7 million kids in America live in a home where at least one parent is considered a drug addict. 7.5 million kids in America right now live in a home where at least one parent is considered an alcoholic, and 11.4 million kids in America live in poverty. So, dude, without good community, without other positive influences like that could speak life into those kids, like obviously it starts at the home first. And so if you're listening to this podcast, you're trying to level up your parenting, you probably don't necessarily fall into those statistics, but like that's the reality of the world that we live in, you know? And so we got to be conscious and aware that, hey, like what I do, they're going to mimic, and who I surround myself with, they're going to do the same thing. So if I got a bunch of knuckleheads over at my house, you know, talking crap and whatever, right? They're going to find friends that act just like that. And then 10 years down the road from now, they'll be doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it kind of creates a normal, right?
100%.
And so like now the things that should seem foreign and abstract and like almost like unsettling, right? Like why would you be doing that? Why would you yell at your spouse? Why would you handle that situation like that? Why is it normal? Is it, you start to create these normal situations, and then it's not. And that's the goal, is to raise them with certain standards where the things that, should come across as like, that ain't right, man. Like that's a broke thought process. That ain't the right mindset. And that could even be from the person that's maybe over, that's a part of the community that's complaining all the time and blaming and justifying all that kind of stuff. You don't want your kid to be like, that person seems like kind of a loser. They ain't right. It's like, well, I mean, don't call them a loser, but their behavior definitely is a loser. You're right. Like that's the kind of thing that you start to see. But dude, to your point, man, 100%. Because like, I'll give you an example. Like when Parker, got diagnosed with cancer, like, dude, that community, that village, dude, it picked me up.
Sure.
If I didn't have like that night,
imagine doing that by yourself,
dude, I don't know what that would have looked like, and I'm obviously resting on the rock, right? At the same time though, God's called us to build community, to fellowship with other believers and people that are like-minded, going after the same kind of things that you're going after. But I got on that on Instagram that night, and I said, listen, like, I'm struggling with having the faith to see a better outcome than the worst case that's just screaming at me. Like, my mind's going nuts about what could take place, and if that happens, how's my wife deal with it? Like, dude, it was so like a negative doom loop that I got on. I said, hey, can you guys share some of your testimonies with me? And dude, honestly, for the next like couple weeks, I would, when I'd have some of those thoughts, I would go through and I'd read those comments that people writing saying, hey, my child was diagnosed with this. Hey, this took place. Hey, I was addicted to drugs for 33 years and God showed up and this took place. Like, I just went through, and what it did, it fed my faith. And then when I was able to step into church, which is a community, and you guys were able to just like lift up our whole family in prayer and love on us and just show us unconditional love. And that's where I was able to conquer that fear that was screaming. It was because I had a community that was built in love and that had love for me and my family. And so it's a big deal,
I mean, for me, so I always believe that what God does, he does through people, right? So most people are like, I don't hear from God, or I don't see God moving, because your expectation of God speaking into your life is off, right?
Yeah.
So if you just think about like what God does and how he moves and how he makes things happen, it's oftentimes through people. So you don't get an audible word, but like the comfort of God came through a community.
Yeah.
Right? Like the vision or the value or the wisdom of God came through like another man or another woman speaking into your, right? So it's like, don't overlook or don't undervalue the community you have around you, because oftentimes that's the tool God's using to speak into your life.
That's good, dude. Yeah, the Holy Spirit will work through them. So standard of a standard worth achieving is number 2. So gift 1 is a community worth having. Gift 2 is a standard worth achieving. Man, this is something that is such a big deal. I mean, I don't care if you've ever listened to any kind of success, podcast or read a personal development book, you've heard the importance of like raising your standards, right? I think Tony Robbins like beats that up, like standards and systems and how important just like a good standard is. And so this is something that, I try to reflect upon pretty frequently, is like, where's the standard? Because I might have an intentional standard. Like I want my kids to honor, right? Like that's a standard we have. But if I don't sit back and reflect and think about it, it's like, all right, well, how well are we doing with that standard? Are we off? And then what can I do to help make sure that the standard is aware? They're aware of the standard. It's visible. It's understood. They're reminded of it. And then what can I do to help enforce that standard? And so a standard worth achieving, I think this is crucial. This is kind of how you level up your family. It starts with, what are the standards that are in place with your family? What do you think about that?
So I think most people desire high standards but live a life of low standards, right?
That's good.
So most people, I want my kids to be better than me, but then you don't show them a standard that is better than yours. Or it's like, I really want my kids to work out and have or be healthy or know the word of God or pray, but then we don't do all those things consistently. And so how could you expect your kids to have a standard that you don't hold yourself, right? And so I think having a standard that's, to pass down to our kids, number one, we got to identify our own standard of living, right? And so it's like, and this is obviously easier said than done to raise the standard, because it's a desire for all of us. Like, we're all more alike than we're not. So we all want, we all want to prosper. We all want good things to happen. But identifying, hey, where's the standard of my life right now? And what's my desire? And then what's the gap? How do I close that chasm, right? And I think for most people, it's being honest and going, hey, this is where we're at as a family, and here's where I'm taking us to, and here's what it's going to take. Because I think expectations of jumping standards are too high. Therefore, you just don't ever achieve them because they're too hard. So like for me, I'm thinking about my kids and like, all right, if I never prayed with them, if I never sat down and read them the word, I'm not all of a sudden going to have a standard where, hey, you kids need to know the Bible by 2 weeks from now, right? But it's like, hey, kids, I'm on this journey, And like, I think this is where our family could be. I think it's where our family should be. Get the buy-in with the family, and then walk through this process of raising the standard over time. And then that new standard becomes a normal, done consistently.
That's good.
Right? Or not just that, anything in life, eating, health, money. Like, hey, what's the standard of our money? Like, the reality is most of us grew up in a situation where the standard of saving and investing and financing or finances were extremely low. And so as soon as you got some money, it was gone because there was no standard of what to do with it. You didn't know. And so I think just being open and honest and transparent, depending on your kid's age, right? And saying, hey, this is the standard we're going to, and we're all on this journey, I think is the next best thing you can do to help raise the standard. Because the truth is, like, we're called to leave a legacy to our kid, right? The Bible says, like, a good man leaves a legacy to his kids. But like, how could you leave a legacy to your kids if your standard is not extremely high?
Yeah.
And you're not teaching them that same standard. You know, the Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance to his kids. And so we have a responsibility to raise the standard for the next generation. So they're able to leave a good legacy as well, right? That's the goal of every father, is like, hey, pass down what I know, my standard, and then the generations from now will be even better.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, that's at least my thought and my goal for my kids, is to raise the standard of living, right? So, hey, this is how I grew up. This is where I live. This is how I dealt with money. This is our neighborhood. This is the cars that we drive. And not that it's a material standard, but like, just this is the way I was thinking. Like, at this age, this was my standard. Like, your standard should be so much better because of all the things that I've walked through. And so I think it's a responsibility as parents to like leave them a standard that's worth living up to.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I think you said it right. Like, it's not just like finances. Like, people think legacy, they think 20 rental houses, they think fat, account that I can transfer, big annuity, all that kind of stuff. And I think sometimes, man, the best legacy you could leave is a legacy of faith, man. A legacy that, hey, you can go out there and be whoever you want to be, who you're called to be. A legacy where your family knows who they are, like their identity, right? Those are some of the things that, the morals, the values, like what you stand for, the standards, I think is the legacy that is worth waking up for, staying up late, and going after day in and day out, is that kind of stuff. And I might give you an example, like, I love my dad, but one of the standards that I had growing up was just like, hey, boy, don't get your girlfriend pregnant. That was the standard.
Right.
And guess what happened? My girlfriend got pregnant, right? And my 17-year-old daughter is sitting right over there, and we got married. Obviously, now we got 5 kids.
Shout out!
And but my whole goal was like, hey, we're gonna change the standard, right? Yeah. And so it wasn't like, don't get your girlfriend pregnant. Our standard is you got to honor God, with your sexual integrity. Like, honor God with making sure you're married and these different things, and that it's just something that is not just, hey, no big deal, let's just make sure we do what we do that thing and be protected. No, it's like, you got to honor God with your sexual integrity. Like, that's a new standard in our household, and that's what we talk about. That's our conversations that we have. It's not, I don't want to talk about it. It's like, no, we need to talk about it. This is a big deal, and there's going to be long-lasting ramifications when you don't do that. There's going to be a lot of things you're going to have to work through when you don't do that. And my wife and I, we had to work through those because of how we were in the standard we had before we got married, and it's like, even like my daughter, we have her read books that talk specifically about that. Hey, what was that book you read with Mike Todd? Relationship Goals? No, it wasn't. That wasn't that one. That was by Rick.
Single and Secure is Rich Wilkerson.
Yeah, so she read Rich Wilkerson. She read Relationship Goals.
Single, sexy, and secure?
I don't think it says single, sexy,
I don't
and
think
secure.
it says that either, but
you might have added that word in there, Pay. No judgment, but we have her reading those books, and it speaks to that. So it's not just me, but like you said, I'm trying to. That's a part of a community too. Is like what you're reading and listening to. So for me, it's like, okay, that's a new standard. So it's not like that's a standard I want to have. I think everybody would want to have that standard. It's like, okay, what can I do to help raise that standard? So I just didn't have, Paige just read business books and books on how to have a successful mindset. She has read those, but I also know how important our new standard is, which is to honor, God with our sexual integrity. And so like, I want her to read books that specifically speak to that, so she has a better understanding of what that standard looks like and how to actually live that standard out. And I'll give you guys a couple quick standards that we try to go after. And we do this each week. So each week, like, I'd sit down and say, all right, this is what our family is. Like, our family is a family that looks people in the eye. Like, even something simple like that. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, my boy, so that's the standard. I'll say, Psalm, did you look them in the eye, dude. Like, respect, show them value. That shows value. We're a family that values people. And so that's something that we'll talk about. We'll fix our focus on like maybe one a week. Cause like it's easy to get overwhelmed, dude. Trust me. Dude, I'll get like thinking about how low some of my family standards are compared to where I want them to be, whether that's honoring, respect, cleaning the room. Like I'll say, hey, our family's a family that takes care of our stuff. We're good custodians of our room. We're good stewards of what we have. And so I'll have that. Yeah, we'll make our beds. And then I'll look and it's not, right? And then I'm like, dude, but just focusing on one, right? And so I think that's an important thing to sit back and say, hey, what do you want your family to look like? If you could design the perfect picture of your family, right? Like this is what our family looks like. If somebody sat back and saw the behaviors of our family, the thought processes of our family, the feelings of our family, the vocabulary of our family, what would that family picture look like? Well, then you sit back and say, okay, let's start talking about that then. Let's talk about it. Let's fix our focus on one of those things specifically this week. You know, one of the things we can say is our family is a family that speaks life. And so that makes it easy then, because you're saying this is who we are, guys. This is what we are. This is our standard. And so now when the kids are fighting, right, and I have it happen all the time where, you know, Perlage, you know, recently she's like, oh, I hate you. I'm like, you know, she'll say that to Penelope. I'm like, sweetheart, let's talk about it, right? And I don't know where she got that from, but the reality is like, she's watching different stuff. She'll have her iPad and pick some stuff up. We try to limit it, but there's still that. So there's consumption that's everywhere, right? And so, but I can stop and say, sweetheart, let me talk to you. Like, our family is a family that speaks life. Now, it seems like you're angry. It seems like you're frustrated, and that's okay to have those feelings. But what's not okay is for you to speak death. It's just to speak evil, to say you're a loser or you're this. Like we don't speak to somebody's identity. If you're frustrated, you need to go calm down and realize that when you speak out of turn, you're speaking out of what our family values. And you're a part of our family. I love you. I know how good you are at this. I expect you to get better. Do you understand me? Yes. So then I'll walk her through it. So next time you feel like that, what are you going to do? And so it's just because it's a standard, now I can say, all right, let me stop when that thing takes place and have that conversation with him. And I mean, dude, to me, the thing that's been most effective is like that, like kind of like a 1 minute reprimand where I can just say, hey, listen, this is what took place. I'll learn how I feel about it. And it's always going to be based off of our standard. So like that makes me feel really disappointed and feel kind of sad when I see one of my kids that I love treat another one of my kids that I love, and I know you love each other, your sisters, and so when I see that, it makes dad feel really sad and disappointed. And the reality is this: I know who you are. I know you're a kid that loves your sister, values your sister, honors your sister. You know our values. You know that we respect and we speak life. And so I expect you to get better because I'm not okay with this taking place. And if it does, this is going to be the specific consequence. You're going to write them an apology letter. You're going to do these. And then having those specific consequences, because I want you to speak to this, dude. Like, a standard that doesn't have any consequences when it's not upheld is not really a standard at all, right? Like, if I have a standard where you got to be at my office at 8 o'clock and you're my employee, and you don't show up, you show up at 9 o'clock and there's no write-ups, there's nothing there, is it really a standard I have? No. Right. I mean, in fact, what you would, after like 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe months go by, and I'm okay with you coming at 9 o'clock, there's no way you could say that company has a standard of getting to work at 8 o'clock. That'd be foolish. Right. That'd be foolish to think about. It'd be foolish to say. You have a desire, like you said. You desire a standard of wanting that to happen, but maybe you sat back and said, you know what, this person's killing it. They're doing a great job. I don't really care if they're there an hour late because they stay 2 hours after work. Well, that's okay, but you need to switch your standard and communicate the fact that that's not your standard anymore, because it's not. Well, dude,
number one, I think what you just communicated was like parenting 101. I think every parent needs to rewind what you just said and learn how, because dude, I'm thinking about how you just walk through like what'd you call it, a minute?
It's like a 1 minute reprimand.
A 1 minute reprimand. Because dude, I'm just thinking about all the different conversations that I have with my boys, because they're at the age where they're fighting like they're brothers. So there's a certain level of like, are your brothers, duke it out a little bit, but at the same time, like I got to teach you to honor, respect, and like at the end of the day, we are family. So I'm thinking about how you broke that down, and dude, so much wisdom in that. Again, like the power of community. Because dude, I'm going to listen to that again and just take that thought process and begin to speak that into my kids. And even the way I parent, that's going to make me better as a parent. So And so if you're a parent, again, rewind that and go back to it. But you're right, man. Like the standards are like, it would kind of be like, we have this great faith and we believe all these things, and we even got pictures in our wall in our house, and we have, posters everywhere, and we have them on the wall, but we don't actually live up to them, or we don't like, they're just a sign that's on the wall, but it's we don't live that way at all. And I think that's what most people do. It's like, it's the same thing with faith, right? It's like we confess this faith, but we don't live it out. So it's like, do you really have it at all?
Yeah.
Like you say you have the values, but you don't live the values, or you don't live the standards. So it's like, you might as well not have them at all, because you're just making things worse for yourself, right? And so like what you're saying, like if your standard is to come in at 8:00 and you allow people to come in at 9, well, then you do have a standard. It's just no standard at all. Like, do whatever you want. That's your standard, right? And so the standard is what you hold yourself and your people, your kids, your employees, your staff accountable to, right? So,
well, dude, I think it's the consequence too is such a big part of it, right? Like for me, being self-employed, one of the things that I had some standards early on. Like I want to be able to be the person that goes the extra mile.
Right.
I want to be the first one in the office. All these kind of things that I knew from just getting around other people that had seen success, that these were some of the standards, right? And so one of the first things I wanted to always look at in any area, right, is like I've asked you quite a bit about, like, what do you do to prepare and study? Like, what platforms you use? What standards do you have? Like, because I'm trying to learn so I can figure out what standards do I need to have when it comes to those things, because I don't want to just wing it. I don't want to just go off of what I think, because what I think is not going to get me to where I want to go. Because the thought process I have now has got me where I'm at. I got to work up a different thought process. And so like in insurance, man, it was the same thing. When I remember being 19, starting the business, and I had a standard that was, I'm going to go out and I'm going to see 15 appointments every single week. That was my standard, like 15 appointments minimal, right? And so nobody's perfect. Nobody always hits their standard, right? But I knew that if I continue to not hit my standard, well, then my standard is no longer the standard. I've got a new standard. It's a standard that I continue to hit. And that might be 10 appointments. So it was, if I hit my 15, and this is going to sound funny, dude, but I was thinking about this the other day. Honest to God truth, man, like if I hit my 15 appointments, Tosh and I, we would go to Applebee's after church on Sunday and have lunch. And that was a big deal, dude, because I grew up and like we didn't go out to eat, bro. Like if I got McDonald's and I got those little like kids meal, the Diet Coke, dude, I would sip it like I would sip it like it was coffee, like, and I would just cherish it because like we didn't have any money, we didn't go out to eat, so like it was a big deal. Like we're going to Applebee's, It's probably why I was like 25 pounds overweight my first year in insurance. Don't even say another pain. But if I didn't hit it, my consequence was I was going to work Sunday. And the reality is my wife didn't like me working Sundays, which made it even worse. And so when I had this thought of like, dude, I don't want to freaking keep dialing. It's 8:00. I've been here all day. It was like, man, I got to get 2 more appointments. And so I would make that 8:00, 9:00, not because, and it was because not, I had a consequence in that 2 hours to pay the price was easier than having to work Sunday. And the reality is, I knew that I was going to force myself to do that. That's another thing. If you tell your kids, like, this is the standard, if you don't uphold it, this is the consequence, and you don't uphold the consequence, it's worse than you even having any of it set up in the first place.
100%.
It's kind of like if you're stealing all the time and you learn not to steal because you read the Bible, but you keep stealing, you feel worse for knowing. You're better off not knowing. And there's even scripture that supports like, the consequences and things that are tied to being understanding and wise and knowing of it, but not doing of it, right? And so I just think that that's a big, big deal. And the cool thing is like when you put those consequences in place and you use those to uphold your standard, what you're starting to do is to treat yourself in such a way that builds integrity and confidence with yourself. Yeah. And so now you're more likely to get to your standard because in the time that you're spent doing the thing that gets you to your standard or your goal or your status quo or whatever, you're actually more confident and bold and hold yourself at a higher level because, I'm a person of integrity and I do what I say I'm going to do. And so it's like a compound effect. It's like the underlining thing that you don't see, but that's there that produces fruit in different areas that compounds it. You know what I mean?
I love it. That's good. So number 2, standard worth achieving. And the last thing, you want to touch on this?
Yeah.
Sure, we tease them. All right, let's get it. Let's get it. The third gift that you can give to your kids is a faith that's worth sharing. Dude, I think this is like you said in the beginning, this is a faith is probably, your faith in God is probably the most important thing that you need to pass down to your kids, and which tells me like I got to have a faith that's worth passing down, right? A faith that's worth sharing with them. Like, hey, you got to have a testimony. You got to have something of value to give to them that would even make them want to buy in to the faith that you have. And so I think, again, it just comes back to authenticity. It comes back to living out what you're saying. It comes back to not just and it hits home for me because I have to make sure that I'm not living one way at church and living another way at home, right? Because they see it. So it's like, oh, dad's, teaching on this, but not living that. So I'm probably more aware than most to make sure that the faith that I'm preaching from a stage is being lived out, because the last thing you want to do is push your kids away. And you hear this all the time, like, oh, I grew for pastors' kids, right? I'm a PK. I grew up in church, and that's the reason I don't go to church, is because like I saw two different lives or two different faiths or two different walks, the one being said and another being lived. And so as a parent, man, we got such a duty and obligation to make sure that the faith that we're professing is the faith that we're living, because the faith is more caught than it's taught, right? So I can teach all day long. Like, dude, I can walk my kids through the Bible and they'll be staring at me like, Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, my teacher said that same thing. Like, I get it, the fish and the well and the sword and the giant. Okay, whatever, Dad. But like, if I could live out of faith, like, and we're in a valley moment and we're in facing a giant, they go, hey boys, this is what the Bible is teaching us. Now it's time for us to have faith. And they could see you walking the faith out. Because most people, like, in valley moments or in hard times, for whatever reason, in those seasons, they lose their faith. Like, that's the point in time where you must have the most faith, right? So you don't need faith when things are going great. You need them in the valley. You need them when, like, there's no way. Like, the door is closing. Right? That's when you need the faith, and that's what your kids need to see. So you got to have a faith that's worth sharing. And so, and that's going back to the standard, right? Like, hey, we're not just going to talk about it. We're going to live this thing out. We're not just going to say prayer is good and never pray.
Right.
like it has to be worth passing down to them, because if not, then there's an integrity gap, like, within yourself.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, like, you're not even all the way bought in. So your kids surely won't be bought in. So I think
that's good, man.
I mean, what's your thoughts on?
Well, dude, I think that, the reality is, like, dude, our kids are going to go through some stuff.
Yeah.
Like, as a parent, like, especially like for my girls, like, dude, I just want to protect them from everything. It's different with girls and boys, and I didn't know that until 3 years ago, and I adopted my son, where it's like, I want my son to be able to, like, rise up and be a warrior, to conquer the world, right? To go out there and know who he is, know that he's got dominion. My girls, dude, I want to just protect them from the world. You know what I mean? Like, I want to keep them, I don't want nothing to happen to them. I want to keep them safe, secure. It's just a different thing as far as how I feel about it, right? And how I feel towards each one of them, right? It's different. And but the truth is, like, dude, we can do everything we in our power, like, and what we can control, and do everything great, and there's still going to be life that just smacks them. It's just the way it is. The scriptures say that many are the trials and tribulations of the righteous, but God will deliver them from all of that. But the reality is, if they're not taught how to stand on the rock and to deal with those valley moments, well, then the response to those valley moments, what happens in them in those valley moments, is going to be what determines where they go from there. It's going to determine their character, who they become, their beliefs, their thought process, their thought patterns. And so I think that's it's like, you almost got to sit back and think, like, if I knew, if I start to ensure and make sure that my example is one of faith, right? One that's like, I'm just, no matter what takes place, I know where my help comes from, and you show that day in and day out. If you knew what that's going to do to your kids and your kids, and because when those things will happen, not if, they will happen, but because of that, they're now going to respond differently. Because it's not what happens to you in life, it's the response to what happens to you in life. They're looking at our response. They're not dumb. They're looking at how, dang, that's tough. How are they responding? Are they going to the bottle? Are they doing this or that? Or are they seeking God? And their response when those things happen, oftentimes will be in likeness. And man, the blessing that could be, or man, the curse that could be, kind of rattles me to sit back and think like, oh, it's not insignificant. It doesn't doesn't matter that much. Oh no, man, it matters significantly what that looks like. And last thing I'd say that, man, is I think you said it really well. Like they're looking for authenticity, right? And in today's world, dude, it's such a artificial world, right? Like you get on Instagram and everybody's kind of like got their highlight reels and stuff like that. Like it's hard to know like what's real, like just hard to know. Like is that person real? Is what they're saying real? Is this life real? What I'm experiencing, what I'm looking at, like it's just so artificial that when the artificial world is so big, the authenticity shines so bright.
Yeah, it's good.
And so that authenticity of like just being authentic, man, just them knowing this is who my mom is, this is who my dad is. It's not who they perceive to be. This is who they are. I know who they are. I know that they're authentic. That's a big deal. So
it's one of the most attractive things, right?
It is, yeah.
It's like it doesn't matter the situation but if you could just see that person's real, you're like, there's something about that guy I love to be around, right? Because because they're just gonna share what's on their heart, good or bad, hurt your feelings or not. Like there's just an authenticity to
no
it.
agenda.
There's no agenda, and your kids know when you believe what you say. So pass them a gift a faith that's worth sharing. So
3 gifts to give your kids for this Christmas. So you're like, Paul, my budget's tight, man. I listened to the one on finances. I'm trying to save more this Christmas, not spend more. I want to invest and reap a harvest down the road. Well, these are 3 gifts that you can give that they ain't cost you nothing, man, but that they'll be the best gifts that the kids can get. And I know for me, every day I'm trying to make sure I'm aware that the gifts are there and how to wrap them and give them day in and day out, because it's a daily thing. Sometimes it's a minute by minute thing. 100%. Sometimes it's like, I know the 1 minute reprimand, but that's not what comes out of my mouth.
Right.
Based on their, it's a lot different, right? And it's crazy. You get to see the fruits pretty quick because your kids are very expressive, right? It's like a kid don't hide the truth, right? It's like, I remember doing this with Psalm, man, and because he's little, he's like 2, 3, he won't hide it or like. I did the reprimand and then I put my hand on him. I said, all right, buddy, I love you. And he's like that. And he was crying. He was angry. He looked at me and said, I'm sorry, Daddy. I love you too. It was the best thing ever, And he's just, you can see it. It was the best way to do it for him, opposed to just any other way that I'd tried before. And so, but guys, hey, we love you. Let's go out there, make it a massive week. Share this, like, subscribe, and let's go out there and be strong and stay steadfast. Take care, guys. Love you.